Shavua Tov, hello, dear friends. It is Saturday night, let's say Shabbat, a week before Rosh Hashana. And these are times where we think about the events which are before us. Tonight was the night of Slichot, the first night of the penitential prayer, according to Ashkenazim, the Ashkenazi custom. Now, this time of year, Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, the Talmud says on Rosh Hashanah, 3 books are open. And one of them, it's the book of life, which the righteous will be written right away for life on Rosh Hashanah. They don't even need to wait for Yom Kippur. Then there's the book of the wicked, because the wicked are also written on Rosh Hashanah for death, because they don't need more time. Nothing will change. But then there's the third book for the Beinonim, for all those in the middle, which is 99.9% of the people. Because most of us are not completely righteous, definitely not completely wicked. So we have time till Yom Kippur to prove the point that we can make those changes. Now, a person would say, wait a second. Rosh Hashanah is 2 days. Yom Kippur is on the 10th of that month. Rosh Hashanah is the 1st and the 2nd. What do you got? 7 days in the middle, maybe 8. So that's it. If you can change yourself for 7, 8 days, that's enough. And I always say, if you can make changes and keep them for a week to 10 days, you could do it the whole year. Because change doesn't come easily. And so if you can do it for a period of a week to 10 days, you could probably do it for the whole year. So there is a motif that we have in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And the motif is in a prayer called Natana Tokef, which we have in the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and in Yom Kippur. And we say Utshuva and penitence, Utfilah and prayer, Utstaka and charity can annul and abolish the evil decrees against us. What are these 3 things? Tshuva, mending our ways, changing our ways, getting rid of our bad actions and habits, trying to turn a new leaf. Tefillah, prayer. Tzedakah, charity, both giving of yourself and helping out financially others, but giving of yourself, doing positive things, trying to mend the negative and getting rid of it, and prayer. How does this work? I like to draw the comparison with the physical world, with your health. I think everybody in the medical world would agree that certain basic things, there are arguments about a lot of things. Should you take this vitamin? Should you do this? But everybody, I think, would agree about 2 things which are very positive for your health. One of them is eating properly, eating a balanced diet. And the second one is exercise, working out, keeping yourself active. Everybody would agree that that will help the quantity and the quality of your life, both. Does that mean that necessarily you'll live longer or better? Not necessarily. But most of the time, it will have a good effect. Why not necessarily? Well, we know that good health starts with picking the right parents. You also have to have the right gene pool. But once that has been done, these things will help. What about the negativity? Is there negativity that we have to get rid of to improve our health? Of course. If a person smokes, they have to stop smoking. They drink alcohol all the time. They have to keep that down to a minimum, possibly very small minimum, and get rid of junk food. Yeah, we know all those things are going to affect too. Okay, so that'll affect my quality and quantity of life? Most probably. But again, there are other factors. But in general, the average person, yes, it will. Now let's translate this into our spiritual well-being. We have the positive and the negative. The positive is called charity, which means the good deeds that we do. Will this affect our spiritual life? Yes. It will affect us as human beings, who we want to become, and also where we reach. What about getting rid of negativity? That's the penitence. All those bad habits, all the things that I accumulated in my life, which I don't want, I have to get rid of that baggage and change myself. Will it help? Yes. Do we know 100% that it's going to keep off all evil decrees? No. So then what do we do? That's the place of prayer. When we turn to God, we are turning to transcendence. We're asking God to help us. Because sometimes, even when we do the right thing, we didn't do it enough. For whatever reason, for whatever baggage we had. And we need help. The Midrash says on the book of Exodus in Shemot Rabbah, Moses went up the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and God showed him the 13 attributes of mercy. So it says that Moses asked God, let me see the rewards in the world to come, the reward and the punishment. God said, no problem. And he showed him a room full of treasures. Moses said, who's that for? He said, those are for the righteous. Wow. And even said to him, there's also things for the wicked. Okay. He showed him another room and says, who's this for? He says, these are for people who have some good deeds also. Good. Then there was a last room. He said, who's that one for? I said, those are for people those are rewards for people who don't have any merits. Moses says, a reward for those who don't have merit? What is that? I said, well, v'chanoti et asher achon, v'richamti et asher arachem. As it says in Exodus, I shall give grace to those who I want to give grace, and I shall show compassion to the ones who I want to show compassion. God has his reasons. So there are those who can receive reward, and you look around, you don't see why they should receive any reward. It's from that extra room that we ask God for his compassion and his grace on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, just in case we don't have enough merit, just in case we didn't change ourselves enough. We still need that help. And on Rosh Hashanah, one of the motifs, aside from this tshuva and tzedakah ma'avirim Torah gzera, that the tshuva and the tefillah and the tzedakah can annul the evil decree. We also sing in Avinu Malkeinu, we say, our Father, our King. Chonenu va'anenu, show us your grace and your loving kindness, because we don't have enough good deeds. So show us your loving kindness, tzedakah and your charity, tzedakah v'chesed, and save us. This is what we say to God. We don't claim to have enough, but you can help us, God. And therefore we ask for mercy on this day too, and compassion. Now, I'd like to add to this a very unusual Mishnah of Rabbi Akiba. You know, this Shabbat, it's the last Shabbat where we read the ethics of the fathers, the Pirkei Avot. We do that from Pesach until Rosh Hashanah. Before I read it, though, who is Rabbi Akiba? Rabbi Akiba is a 2nd century rabbinic scholar, member of the Sanhedrin, of the High Court. But he's a very central figure in the whole oral transmission. It is said that Stam Mishnah, the Mishnah is the first corpus of the oral tradition. Stam Mishnah, any Mishnah which has no name, follows the opinion of Rabbi Meir, a student and colleague of Rabbi Akiba. V'kula liba de Rabbi Akiba, and all the Mishnayot follow the academy of Rabbi Akiba, meaning the opinion of Rabbi Akiba. So Rabbi Akiba is a central figure in the transmission of the oral tradition. He also was a central figure in the Bar Kokhba revolt. And he was a man who didn't have an easy life. He did marry the woman of his dreams, Rachel, but she was disowned by her father because at the time Akiba was an ignoramus, even though he promised to learn to be a scholar. But for the 24 years that he learned to be a scholar, they were disowned by the father-in-law. They had very little. They were quite poor. Till after 24 years, the father-in-law annulled his vows and embraced them. And then he was an ideologue behind the Bar Kokhba revolt. According to a source, he lost his son in that revolt. He lost most of his students, according to Talmudic source, probably in that revolt between Pesach and Shavuot. And he himself was killed by the Romans, probably because of that revolt, as what was called one of the 10 martyrs. So therefore, it's interesting to see what Akiba has to say about reward and punishment. And this is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, chapter 3. And in this Mishnah, which is Mishnah number 19, first is 19 is a very popular one. Hakol Safoi, everything is known in advance by God, Varashut Nutuna, but there is free will to act. And the world is judged positively, and everything is according to human action. Wow. Akiba says there's a program, there's a design to the world, to the spiritual world. God sees everything in advance, but there is free will. I don't want to talk about that paradox. I talk about it in my book, Jewish Faith in a Changing World, but that's not what I want to talk about at the moment. But there is free will. And God looks positively on the world and waits for man to do something. And when we activate that free will to do something, we gain merit. Part one. Then the second Mishnah goes into a whole system. The system of Rabbi Akiba, the way he understands the world. Hu haya omer, he used to say, Hakol natun be'eravon. Everything is held as collateral. What does it mean everything is credit? Everything is held as collateral? Your soul. Maharal also explains that way. You know, in Kabbalistic terminology, the soul is like a ladder. You have the higher part of the soul, the lower. So the lower part of the soul is in our bodies. That's how we function. The higher part of the soul is being held on by God. That's the collateral. You know, never get it 100%. He holds on. One day he will take it back. So everything is held in collateral. For us, everything is the soul. That's what gives us life. Umitsuda prusa al kol ha'chaim. And there is a net which covers all of life, which means you have your area that you can function in, but it's limited. You're moving in a net in life. There is surveillance. Mitsuda prusa l'chaim. V'chanut ptucha, which means the shop is open, or today we would say the bank is open. V'chen vani makif, and the shop owner or the banker gives credit. V'pinchas patuach, and the notebook is open, and the hand is writing, and anybody who wants to borrow can borrow. And borrow on that credit. V'gabayim machzirim, and there are those who are in charge who make sure to take back what you borrowed on a daily basis. And when they take back, whether it's part or even more, they take it back from human beings, whether we realize it or not. And they know exactly what to take back, because the judgment is a true judgment, and everything awaits feast at the end. Well, you have here a metaphorical depiction of a system. This intricate system I find it fascinating. Akiva is saying the world works on a system of checks and balances, if you want to call it like that. God is holding on to the soul from his side, and we have it. This is the first thing which we have. The collateral, of course, without our soul, we have nothing. So that's also our collateral. And God puts us into this world. And then we have credit. And we can borrow on that credit because there are things we have to do in this world. If we had nothing to do here, we wouldn't be here. Somebody once said, if you don't have anything to do, don't do it here. So if we're in this world, there's a reason why we're in this world. We have something to do. So we can borrow on that credit. But when we borrow on the credit, we have to prove that we did something. How do you prove that you did something? Well, you can gain merit by doing good deeds, by fulfilling our purpose in this world, which we have to figure out. But in the meantime, you can definitely do good deeds. And you can also try to take away the negativity from your life. And if you take away the negativity, well, that's also creating merit. So this is one of the ways that we can pay back. But then, but what if we didn't pay back enough? Remember, the credit is taken back, the loan is taken back, whether we wanted to or not, whether we know it or not. So how do they take back when we didn't supply enough merit? Well, they can take from other things too. I'll give 4 examples. One of them is our income. It's hard to live without an income. So one way then, instead of hurting the person, is taking away their income. All of a sudden you get all these bills, you have no idea where they came from. There was some mistake, somebody stole your car. You lost, whatever. So it could be from mammon. Adam karov etzel mammono. We depend upon money. When it's taken away, it's a way of paying back also credit, because it makes our life a little bit harder. But we have to be happy that it was the money and not something else. Sephardic Jews, when something happens, they lose money, they say kapara, atonement. Ashkenazic Jews, when something happens, they say Ashena Reina Kapora, which is the same thing. Atonement. But what else could it be? It could be status. We like having status, we like having power. We can lose status, lose power. It's also a payback. We didn't want that to happen, but it happened. It hurt. But if we take it gracefully, that could also be. What else could it be? Could be things more serious, health issues. But it could be light health issues, we get sick. Or it could be serious health issues, which are also payback. You know, the Talmud in Brachot has this idea based on a verse in the book of Eov, of Job. Adam la'amal yulad. Human beings were born to toil. And the Talmud says that sometimes a human being has to have a certain amount of suffering in this world. That suffering is part of the payback. It doesn't have to be a lot of suffering. It could be a real minimum. What's the minimum? Talmud gives an example of the minimum suffering that has to happen on a daily basis. Put your hand in your pocket, you're looking for that quarter, and a dime keeps coming up. That little frustration, that's the minimum. Talmud says if a week went by and you had absolutely no suffering, then you start to worry, because there might be a tsunami waiting in the somewhere in the wings. So we can either try to gain merit, or sometimes the suffering itself is a way of paying off the merit. And there's different types of suffering in life. So this all ties in with Akiba's idea of this programmed world of checks and balances, of a system, a very interesting system. But in the system, we can create merit. We can change ourselves. We can, because we're here to fulfill something. Everybody has something which the other person cannot do. And when we fulfill this, we get this merit. This is our payback, and we can borrow more. So, but what if we don't have enough? And what if all those things and the suffering is not enough? Then we have prayer. Just like I said about Rosh Hashana, Teshuvah, Tefillah, Tzedakah. There is doing charity and good deeds. There is mending yourself, but then there's always prayer. And when we pray to God, again, we ask for that reward for the ones that don't have enough. We say, God, give us this chance. We are mending, we're doing what we can. We realize it might not be enough. But we need additional credit from you, not through the system. And let us have it so that we can show you that this will be a good year. And these are the things that we think about when we think about Rabbi Akiva's system and coming towards Rosh Hashanah. I wish everybody Ktiva v'chatima tova, may we all be inscribed in the book of life. Shalom, shalom.